Today we're going to talk about Chris Steele's decommitment from USC and all that's coming up after the bumper.
What do you mean you don't subscribe to my son's YouTube channel?
Mama, no!
Just snap the damn ball, RJ.
What's up, kid folks? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Considering the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always OU related, college football related, sports related. We have a good time. And today we're going to talk about Chris Steele's decommitment from USC, which happened earlier today, and what that means for Oklahoma and Steele going forward. But first, I got, this book coming out. It's called Let It Bang. It's available wherever books are sold. I wrote it. It's a big deal. I'm going to be on Canadian radio, the CBC, The Current, which I listen to, which is kind of awesome. On Point Radio, which is another radio program on NPR that I listen to, which is awesome. And a few other radio shows and book events that I just don't remember right now because we don't really do this with a script, man. Before we get into my thoughts on Chris Steele and his decommitment, the 2019 Oklahoma football schedule came out. And it is a snoozer in the non-conference, right? You have Houston, who I know folks are going to be geeked about because we owe Houston a beating. And Oklahoma hasn't gotten a win over Houston since 2004. And Magic City Tom basically embarrassed OU. However, Magic City Tom's no longer Houston's coach, and Ed Oliver's no longer going to be at Houston, so I don't know what they're going to be. And then you got South Dakota, which is the first meeting between the two schools, and the guaranteed pay-per-view game on the schedule next year. Start saving up the money to buy that game, because those of us who are diehards and watch everything are going to pay money to watch that game, or listen to it on the radio, whatever it is you're going to do, but nobody's going to be enthusiastic about that game. And UCLA, we hope will be better. I think will be better, but I don't think it's going to be the marquee game on the schedule that everybody hoped it would be when they signed this agreement. UCLA, Chip Kelly, they'll be a year long, they'll be better, but is it going to be the kind of thing that Fox or ABC decides to show in prime time? I don't think so, man. And that's the real downer of this 2019 schedule. It's just, it feels a lot like what Alabama does, which is fine if you're Alabama because they play in the SEC and they're going to get that selection committee bias. But Oklahoma, where the Big 12 is really not that tough, and it's kind of soft when you're talking about bowl schedules and how well Big 12 teams perform in postseason matchups. You need to schedule some names if you're Oklahoma, and I know that this isn't normal, and I know that there's some folks that just like, fine, let's put cupcakes on the schedule if we're going to get dinged, if we're not going to get the added bonus from putting stronger teams on the schedule. And I think you'll be able to recruit to these events because, honestly, the recruiting operation under Lincoln Riley is ridiculous. I mean, it's just awesome. But this is more about fans. This is more about folks who shell out thousands of dollars to go to 6 home games a year. What are you going to tell them? That's the message that needs to get out and get out right away, is what are you selling to your season ticket holders when you schedule a team like South Dakota and expect them to pay top dollar for it, and then tell people, hey, it's going to be on pay-per-view, but it ain't our fault because we sold the rights to Fox. Whatever, man. This is an OU problem, and this is one that they're going to have to address in the coming year. So now let's get into Chris Steele's decommitment. And he decommitted with a rather long letter about why he just thought, hey, I don't really think that I should just be tied to USC right now. Don't think I should be married there. And I am open to other teams recruiting. Now, there are folks like myself who have reached out to folks around Steele and at different programs to see what this means. And the first thing I have to tell you is that USC is still the leader in the clubhouse, all right? Chris Steele goes to St. John Bosco. It is down the road from USC. He likes Clay Helton. He likes the program. He likes knowing that he probably could play right away as a corner. Oklahoma was in on him. Matter of fact, if you go listen to the Woosaw podcast, you can see I had a conversation with him about committing to USC and what that means and why he decided that that was the place for him at the time. And I think that's worth listening to again, and it just reinforces the idea that the Trojans, they should be a little worried, but not that worried, because you're talking about USC and perhaps Florida and Oklahoma with Oregon and South Carolina, right? I think Florida has an edge here, specifically because Todd Grantham's defense has been playing lights out. Florida is a rising program in the SEC East, which is a national stage. They're going to play Georgia. They're going to get better. They had games against LSU. They had a big win against LSU. And I believe that that's the kind of place for a corner, a secondary player, a defensive player to go right now is the SEC, because the SEC is showing that they can put people into the league. That's not something Oklahoma can say about its defense here recently. However, I think this is where Brendan Buki Radley-Hiles is going to do a lot of the work on the recruiting front for Oklahoma. Everyone knows that Buki is close with Steele. Steele values Buki and values Buki's advice. And I also think that he would like to be playing alongside him. And I think that's a reason for why you could think of Chris Steele making a visit to Oklahoma. That'd be a big get, but I'm not necessarily thinking that it's going to happen. I think right now it's between USC and perhaps Florida, because South Carolina is a dumpster fire, and maybe Oregon, if they can continue to reel off wins and impress him with what they can do on defense. But I'm not really thinking Oklahoma as much as most folks, because Oklahoma has 2 cornerbacks committed to the class already in Woody Washington and Jaden Davis, and you need a safety, right? Oklahoma has Jamal Morris, and he's going to be outstanding. Matter of fact, I was watching film with a former college football coach that he compared him to what Tony Jefferson was, and at an elite level, like at a peak level, what Steve Atwater was for all of you old folks. For folks like me, if you didn't come up with your dad telling you about Steve Atwater, you probably don't know who we're talking about. Shout out to my dad who told me about Steve Atwater. I think what Oklahoma has at its disposal to sell right now is perhaps a new defensive coordinator. And that's a conversation that I think a lot of recruits are going to want to have is, who are you thinking about? Is it going to be Ruffin long term? Is it going to be Bob Diaco stepping in? Do you have candidates in mind, and what kind of schemes do they run, and where do I fit into those schemes? I think that's really, really important when you're talking about recruiting elite 2019 and 2020 players going forward. There are some guys that will commit on the strength of the program. I don't think that Chris Steele is one of those guys, especially if Florida ends up being worthwhile this season, because you can see what Todd Grantham is doing, and you can see how Chris Steele would fit in there at corner. Number one, Florida is far ahead on the defensive side of the football. And number 2, Oklahoma has 2 cornerbacks in the class. Now, yeah, you would take a 5-star cornerback like Chris Steele, but would you be willing to sacrifice that safety spot for someone like, say, like any one of the safety recruits that Oklahoma is looking at, like Mansfield safety Jalen Catalon, like 4-star safety Jordan Battle, like 4-star safety Peyton Powell? But that's also a first world problem, right? Picking one of these great safeties or picking one of the best cornerbacks in the 2019 class. But also, kids got to commit, right? And that's going to tell you a lot about the boat, is who commits and when, because we still have a set of eyes that's unaccounted for. So we know that someone's in the boat that plays a position we don't know about just yet. So I'm telling folks to kind of calm down about Chris Steele decommitting. I understand that that's not necessarily a message that a lot of OU fans want to hear. They specifically don't want to hear that Florida's defense might be the reason that they lose a kid to Florida who's coming out of California, who has ties to the program, and put Oklahoma in his top 5 before decommitting from USC. But also, again, USC is the team to beat here. And I think Chris Steele and all the folks around him would tell you that. That said, I'm really interested to see what happens with Bubba Bolden, because in withdrawing, he's basically open for recruiting. And while he was heavily recruited by Ohio State out of Bishop Gorman, and he was teammates with Tate Martell, who is quarterback at Ohio State, they seem to be the front runner. However, if you're Oklahoma, you need a safety. And if that safety comes from the last class, say 2017, I don't think you're going to be upset about adding a guy like Chris Steele to the 2019 class, because you're helped at safety, because Bubba Bolden can help you at a position where Oklahoma needs help. We know how we feel about the free safety and strong safety positions here, and we know how strong this 2019 class is. And if it gets a little bit stronger at defensive line, and it gets a little bit stronger in the secondary with the add of a safety, yes, this is going to be an all-timer class.